My wife cheated with her boss, then claimed I fraudulently transferred $150, $0 from our joint account to her sister's estate, and now she's threatening to take everything in a vicious legal battle over our house and savings. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My wife, Lisa, always seemed perfect, beautiful, smart, the kind of woman every man dreams of. We had been married for 8 years, and I thought I knew everything about her. Turns out I didn't know nearly enough. The signs were subtle at first, little things that didn't add up, but I brushed them off. A missed call here, a late night there, her phone buzzing more often than usual. She'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, saying she was working late or with friends. I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. Then came the big shock. I was going through our bank statements, trying to gather paperwork for a project, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. A transfer of $150, $0 from our joint account, money we'd saved for a house, for our future, disappearing. The transfer was made to an unknown account, but what made it worse was that the account belonged to Lisa's sister. I knew she was always a bit flaky, but she was honest, or so I thought. I called Lisa that night, and her tone was icy, almost dismissive. "Hey, Lisa, what's this transfer to's account? We didn't discuss any loans or gifts lately," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, that," she replied, her voice light but with a strange edge. "It's just some money I lent for her estate. Remember, her mom passed away last month and she's been struggling. I helped her out." I blinked. I knew Lisa liked to spin stories, but this didn't sit right. I pressed her further, asking for details, but she kept dodging, saying it was nobody's business. That night I couldn't sleep. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones. Over the next few days, I started noticing more. Lisa was acting weird, more secretive, more defensive. She'd hide her phone when I entered the room, and her stories about where she was, dinner with friends, work events, started to clash. I caught her in little lies, small at first, then bigger. She'd claim she was working late, but I'd see her texting someone under the table, quick to hide her phone. When I pressed her about her behavior, she snapped. Said I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of things she hadn't done. Then I found out she'd been seeing her boss. I'd noticed her texts with him, the way she'd get flushed when she answered her phone. I saw the messages, flirty, suggestive, explicit even. She'd always been good at hiding it, but I caught her one night when she forgot to log out of her email. There in her inbox were emails from talking about their secret meetings, hot sex, and plans to meet up again. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with her boss, and I had proof. When I confronted her, Lisa's reaction was a mixture of anger and denial. She told me I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that was just a friend. She said I was paranoid because I was insecure. She lied and lied, spinning a web of bullshit. She claimed the money transfer was for her sister, that I was imagining things, but I knew the truth. I saw it with my own eyes. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was betrayal on a level I never expected. I felt numb, furious, and utterly betrayed. My mind was racing. What else was she hiding? How long had this been going on? I was devastated, not just because she cheated, but because she lied so convincingly. I started questioning everything: our life, our love, the trust I thought we had. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. And yet, here I was with the evidence in my hands, trying to figure out what to do next. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. The house felt like a prison, and every time I looked at Lisa, I saw a stranger. The trust we'd built over the years was shattered, and I was left with a deep, gnawing anger. I kept replaying the moments I caught her lying, the way she dismissed my concerns, her cold eyes when I confronted her about and the money. It was like I'd been living with a lie all along, and now that I knew the truth, I couldn't unsee it. I decided I needed to get answers. I started digging deeper into the transfer, the accounts, and her phone. I hired a private investigator, not because I wanted to catch her in something else, but because I needed to understand the scope of her deception. The pie uncovered more than I expected. Lisa had been seeing for months, secret meetings, late nights, and a series of flirty texts. The affair was ongoing, and from what I learned, was not only her boss but also a man with a reputation for being manipulative and controlling. That made me see red. My wife, my partner, was in bed with a man who probably saw her as just another conquest, another notch on his belt. Meanwhile, I couldn't ignore the financial mess. The $150, $0 gone from our account was just the beginning. Lisa insisted it was a loan to her sister to cover her estate expenses. But I knew she was irresponsible, yes, but she wasn't capable of handling that kind of money. The more I looked into it, the more suspicious her story sounded. I found out was also drowning in debt, with no real estate or estate to speak of. It was clear Lisa had lied to cover her tracks, probably to hide her affair and the money she was funneling to or her sister. I confronted Lisa again, this time more aggressively. I laid out everything I'd uncovered, the texts, the transfer evidence, the Pi's report. Her reaction was a mixture of anger and contempt. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and said I was making everything up out of jealousy. She told me was just a friend, that I was insecure, that I was overreacting. When I pressed her about the money, she snapped, saying she made a mistake and that I was trying to ruin her reputation. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with a woman who could lie with a straight face, who had no remorse, no regard for the damage she was causing. The emotional toll was unbearable. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with the reality that the woman I'd loved and trusted had been cheating, lying, and stealing from us. I felt like I was losing my mind, caught between heartbreak and rage. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and make her admit everything, but I knew that wouldn't help. I had to think carefully about what to do next. In the days that followed, I realized I couldn't stay in this situation. The trust was broken beyond repair. I started planning my next steps. I knew I had to protect myself, my money, and my rights. I began consulting with a lawyer about our joint assets, the house, the savings, and how to handle the legal mess Lisa was preparing to throw at me. She had already started threatening me, saying she'd take everything, that I'd regret messing with her. That's when I knew I had to be ready for a fight. I couldn't let her destroy what little stability I had left. Honestly, I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd have to fight for my own marriage and my future. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized that sometimes love isn't enough to survive betrayal. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight back, even if it means tearing everything down to rebuild. I was determined not to let her take everything without a fight. The war was just beginning. Once I decided I wasn't going to let Lisa walk all over me, I threw myself into gathering everything I could: proof, documents, anything that could help me in the upcoming legal battle. I knew she'd try to spin things her way, so I had to be meticulous. I pulled out all our bank statements, saved every email, screenshot every text message from, and even hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her day-to-day. I wanted to be ready for anything she threw at me. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting more bitchy and entitled than ever. She'd throw tantrums about the house, about the money, about my paranoia, as she called it. She'd scream that I was trying to ruin her life, that I was a jealous, insecure husband who didn't deserve her. But her words didn't matter anymore. I'd seen her true colors, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into backing down. I knew she was planning to fight dirty, so I decided I had to get ahead of her. One night, she snapped at me over dinner. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Just because you found out I cheated doesn't mean you can control everything. I'll take what's mine and there's nothing you can do about it." Her voice was venomous and her eyes flashed with fury. I felt a surge of anger. I didn't want to fight her, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I told her flatly, "You're not taking anything from me, Lisa. I've worked too hard to build what we have. If you want to go down this path, be prepared for the consequences." Her face twisted with rage. "I'll see you in court and I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me. You're too stupid to see what's coming." That was the first time she threatened me outright, and honestly, it made my blood boil. She'd always been a bitch, but now she was full-on vicious. I realized then she was willing to burn everything to get what she wanted: our house, our savings, everything. I also started to think about the money. The $150, $0 she transferred out of our account was just the tip of the iceberg. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny she'd moved around. Turns out she'd been funneling money into this account for months, probably paying for their secret meetups, gifts, or even just hiding their affair. She claimed it was for her sister's estate, but the accountant found inconsistencies. No estate, no real estate, just a lot of shady transfers. The more I uncovered, the more I saw how deep her lies went. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd loved her, trusted her, built a life with her. And now I was staring at the wreckage of that life, trying to pick up the pieces. I'd never been a confrontational person, but this situation changed me. I was ready to fight her in court, to protect what was mine, and to make sure she paid for what she'd done. I'd be damned if she just walked away with everything, especially after betraying me like this. The next step was to talk to a lawyer. I wanted to understand my rights, what I could claim, and how to prepare for the legal war ahead. I also told my closest friends what was happening, just to have some support. I didn't want to go through this alone, even if I had to do most of the heavy lifting myself. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't let her see me crumble. I had to be strong, strategic, and ready for whatever she threw at me. All I could think about was how I got here, how I went from a happy marriage to a battlefield. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, steal from me, then threaten to take everything I had? I was angry, yes, but underneath it all, I was hurt. Deep down, I still loved her, but I also knew I had to protect myself first. I couldn't let her destroy what little stability I had left. The fight was just beginning, and I was determined to come out on top. The legal consultations were eye-opening. My lawyer, Mark, was straightforward. He told me Lisa was gearing up for a nasty fight, and I needed to be prepared for everything. She'd already started to threaten me with legal action over the house and our savings, claiming I'd fraudulently transferred money that rightfully belonged to her and her sister. That was a blatant lie, but knowing her, she'd spin it that way. She was good at twisting facts, and I knew she'd try to paint me as the villain. That's why I had to be meticulous, organized, and ready to prove my case. I spent the next week compiling every piece of evidence I had. I got bank statements, texts, emails, and the Pi's reports. I also ordered a forensic accountant to dig into her financial transactions. Turns out, Lisa had been secretly funneling money to probably for their affair long before I even knew. The accountant found multiple transfers, some under the guise of loans, but they were just cover stories. The money was paying for their secret meetups, gifts, and who knows what else. I was furious. The betrayal cut so deep I felt physically ill. Meanwhile, Lisa was escalating her bitchy attitude. She'd throw tantrums, scream at me, call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her. Her favorite line was, "You're just jealous because doesn't want you anymore." She'd say I was insecure, that I was imagining everything, but I knew better. I'd seen too much, and I had the evidence to back it up. Her lies about the money, her affair, everything was coming apart at the seams. I started to realize she was willing to burn everything down to save her own hide. One night she confronted me in the living room. Her face was twisted with fury, her voice venomous. "You think you can control me? You think I care about your stupid rules? I'll take everything, the house, the savings, everything you ever worked for, and there's nothing you can do about it." She was practically spitting the words. I looked at her, feeling a mix of rage and sadness. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was a selfish bitch, but I kept my cool. Instead, I told her, "You're not taking anything from me, Lisa. I've worked too hard for this. If you want to go down this path, be prepared to lose everything." Her eyes flashed with hatred. "You're going to regret crossing me," she hissed. "I'll see you in court, and I'll make sure you pay for what you did." That was the first time she threatened me outright. It was chilling, but it also made me realize she was dangerous. She wasn't going to go quietly. She was willing to fight dirty, and I had to be ready for that. The money situation was getting messier. I discovered she'd been secretly transferring funds into this account, probably paying for their affair, long before I found out. The forensic accountant confirmed she was covering her tracks, claiming it was for her sister's estate, but there was no estate. No property, no inheritance, just a lot of shady transfers. I had no doubt she'd been lying to me all along, trying to hide her infidelity and her financial schemes. Emotionally, I was drained. Every day felt like a battle. I kept asking myself how I got here, how I could have been so blind. I loved her, trusted her, and now I was staring down the barrel of a divorce war. Part of me wanted to believe she'd change, that maybe we could fix this, but deep down, I knew that was a pipe dream. She made her choices, and I had to decide what I was willing to fight for. I decided to move forward with the legal process. I filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and the betrayal. I also filed a motion to freeze our joint accounts and prevent her from draining them further. I knew she'd try to hide assets or transfer money again, so I had to act fast. I wanted to protect what was mine, and I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. That night, I sat alone in the dark, feeling exhausted but determined. I realized I'd lost a lot: trust, love, stability, but I still had my dignity. I'd stand my ground, fight for what was rightfully mine, and make sure she paid for her lies. I knew this wasn't over, but I was ready for the battle ahead. I couldn't change what she did, but I could control how I responded. And I was damn sure I wouldn't let her win this easily. The legal process moved faster than I expected, probably because Lisa was trying to make her move before I could strengthen my position. She filed her own claims, accusing me of fraud and demanding a share of the house and savings, claiming I had manipulated her into transferring the money. Her lawyers spun a story about how I'd been controlling and abusive, trying to paint her as the victim. But I had all the evidence: bank statements, the PI reports, the forensic accountant's findings, that painted a very different picture. During this chaos, Lisa's attitude grew even more vicious. She'd call me names, scream at me over the phone, threaten me with legal action at every turn. Her voice was bitter, full of venom, and she'd accuse me of ruining her life. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she'd become. For her, this was all about revenge and getting what she wanted, no matter the cost. She'd even threatened to take the house, claiming I'd fraudulently transferred the money, which was a blatant lie. I knew I had to fight harder. I hired a forensic accountant to go through the entire financial trail, and what they uncovered was staggering. Lisa had been secretly funneling money to, probably paying for their secret meetings, gifts, maybe even hiding assets from me. The transfers weren't just for her sisters. They were a cover-up for her affair and her greed. My lawyer used this evidence to prepare a strong case, arguing that Lisa's claims were baseless and that she'd been manipulating the finances all along. Meanwhile, Lisa's legal team tried to intimidate me. They sent threatening letters, claiming I'd committed fraud when I transferred the money to cover our mortgage and bills, things I did to protect our assets because I knew she was planning something. I responded with my own legal notices, demanding full disclosure of her finances and her affair. I wanted the truth out in the open. I also filed for a court order to freeze her accounts, preventing her from moving money around further. The emotional toll was brutal. I was exhausted, angry, and hurt. I kept replaying everything: her lies, her betrayal, the way she'd call me names and accuse me of things I didn't do. I felt like I was fighting not just for my money or my house, but for my sanity. I couldn't sleep some nights, and the constant stress made me question whether I'd ever find peace again. But I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her win, not after everything. In the midst of all this, I started seeing a counselor. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me process what I was going through. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, it was a lot to handle. My counselor told me to focus on myself, to stay grounded, and to remember that I deserved better than someone who would lie and cheat and threaten to destroy everything we'd built. That advice kept me going, even on the darkest days. As the court date approached, I prepared myself for the final showdown. I knew Lisa would do everything in her power to turn the case against me, to make me look like the villain. But I had the evidence, the truth, and the law on my side. I was ready to fight for my rights, for my future, and for the dignity she tried to strip away. I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight back to protect yourself. I wasn't just fighting for the house or the money. I was fighting to restore my sense of self, my peace of mind, and my future. And I was determined not to lose. The court date finally arrived after months of legal battles, accusations, and endless nights of sleepless worry. I sat in the courtroom feeling a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. Lisa was there, her face tight with anger, her lawyer trying to spin her lies. I had my evidence, organized and undeniable, ready to tell my side of the story. The judge listened carefully as I laid out everything: the transfers, the texts from the PI reports, and the forensic accountant's findings. I could see Lisa's lawyer scrambling to counter, but it was clear I had the stronger case. When it was her turn to speak, Lisa threw everything she had: accusations of fraud, claims that I manipulated her, that I was controlling and abusive. She looked straight at me with venomous eyes, trying to provoke a reaction. But I stayed calm because I knew the truth. I knew I'd done everything to protect what was ours, and I refused to be painted as the villain. Her words fell flat, and the judge saw through her lies. After a tense deliberation, the judge ruled in my favor. The house was awarded to me, and the court ordered Lisa to repay the stolen money, plus damages for her financial misconduct. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Lisa's legal team tried to appeal, but the evidence was too solid. She was ordered to pay back the money, and the court granted me sole custody of the house. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone cold and ruthless. The betrayal had cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever fully recover. But I also knew I was finally free from her manipulations and lies. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding my life. I moved out of the house into a smaller apartment and took time to heal. I cut all contact with Lisa. I blocked her number, deleted her social media, and focused on myself. I realized how much her betrayal had drained me, emotionally, financially, psychologically. But I also learned something crucial. I was stronger than I thought. I survived everything she threw at me, and I came out the other side still standing. Looking back, I see how blind I was for so long. I see the signs I ignored, the little red flags that I brushed aside because I wanted to believe in us. But I also see the importance of standing up for yourself, of fighting for what's right, even when it's hard. Lisa's betrayal taught me that love isn't enough. Trust has to be earned every day, and when it's broken, you have to be ready to walk away, no matter how painful. Now I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy, reconnected with friends, and even begun dating again. It's been a long road, but I finally feel like I'm moving forward. The pain will always be there, but I refuse to let it define me. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's this: don't ignore the signs. When someone shows you they're capable of betrayal, don't wait too long to protect yourself. Love and trust are precious, but they're also fragile. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away and rebuild from the ashes. I hope sharing this story helps someone out there. If you're going through something similar, trust me, you're not alone. Stand tall, gather your evidence, and fight for your future. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are worth more than any lie, any betrayal, or any false promise.